Hi everyone, and welcome to our Year 10 Parents Information, what should have been evening, but as you can probably tell by the light, it's not evening now, and this is certainly not the way I anticipated presenting it to you. We would have normally met up in the hall. It's normally a very well attended evening in schools I've run this in the past, because obviously the next stage of your son or daughter's education is incredibly important to them and to you. So I'm sorry we can't do this in person, but hopefully this will give you some of the information that you might be wanting at this stage. But if you have any further questions, we are going to be sending out a form that you can ask those questions on, and we can then get back to you with either individual answers, or maybe if there's some that are similar, a facts document that will cover things that possibly I don't cover in what I'm about to do. So hopefully you'll find this useful. What we wanted to really cover tonight was a little bit about the new GCSEs, how they're different, and the new grades. They're not so new anymore, but still I think quite confusing. How we set targets, track progress, etc. to support students, so that we make sure they're making the progress they should be doing. What sort of school support we might then be putting in place, how you might be able to help support them in this journey they're on over the next couple of years, and then just finally a bit of a timeline of how things will unfold over the next couple of years. So hopefully you'll find it useful. But as I say, if there are any things I don't cover and you would like further information, do let us know. So to start with, the reformed GCSEs, as I mentioned, are not so new anymore. We first started to teach them in 2015, first examination in 2017. We started with maths and English, and then it spread out, and by this time now we have all subjects have now moved across to the new GCSEs, and the new number grades, although they've been around for a few years now. I think we're just so familiar with letters that we default back to letters, and certainly I know some people still find it quite confusing with numbers. So what I have for you is a very short video which tells you a little bit about the numbers and why they were introduced before we move on. So hopefully that will explain a little bit more and you'll find it useful.
Every year, hundreds of thousands of young people take part in GCSE exams, giving them a chance to show their ability in a range of subjects. Starting with English and Maths in 2017, there will be changes to GCSE qualifications and to the grading system used in England. The new system has more grades and replaces letters with the numbers 9 to 1, with 9 being the highest grade. It will mean that instead of the 4 grades from A star to C, which most students currently achieve, the new system will have 6 grades. Fewer grade 9s will be awarded than A stars are currently, rewarding exceptional performance. Other high-achieving students will get a grade 8 or 7. The new subject content will be more challenging, and to be fair to students taking the new GCSEs, about the same proportion will be given a grade 4 or above, as have been given a grade C or above in the past. GCSEs are an important milestone in students' lives, and the new grades will better reflect their individual achievements. 9 to 1 GCSE grading starts in 2017 with English language, English literature and maths, and will eventually apply to all new GCSEs in England.
So reformed GCSE is not just about number grades changing. There were some other changes that happened at the same time. The qualifications are in some cases more demanding, something we're well used to now after a few years of getting used to that fact. They're designed to be a 2-year course now, so at the end pupils take exams. There are many more exams because the non-exam assessment, the coursework element of all subjects, is either being taken away or is being reduced completely. So the only places you'll now see coursework is in vocational qualifications and also in the practical GCSEs such as food and technology, etc., where obviously that is an important part, but it is greatly reduced. The other thing that they changed was the fact that untiered test papers. So before you might have had different levels of entry. Now the only subjects that have different levels of entry, higher and foundation are the sciences, maths and modern foreign languages. So that was a change at the time as well. But as I say, it's something that we're well used to now. It was new a few years ago, and obviously staff have got used to that, and we can help and guide students through that process very effectively. Just to mention, obviously that was for GCSEs. Vocational courses have undergone changes across that time as well. The grading system for vocational courses is on the screen, so we don't use numbers with those. It is distinctions, merits, passes, etc. at different levels. So just an idea there that a level 2 pass is the equivalent of a grade 4 or above, which is how GCSEs work as well. Grade 4 above at GCSE is called a level 2 qualification. Below that is a level 1 qualification, which becomes important when students are moving on to courses after year 11, where they may be looking at college courses and looking at different levels, and A levels obviously sit above that as level 3 courses along with the level 3 BTECs. So just a bit of background there for you. So vocational courses, the main change to those that happened over recent years is the introduction of an exam. So the majority are assessed by the majority of the qualification is assessed by assessments in class, but there is now to all of them an exam element. That means that all students will need to sit that exam, which again is something we're used to now. It's not new. So how do we track progress at Hampton Gardens? Well, the way the government measures a student's progress is by looking at their Key Stage 2 data, which may come as a little bit of a surprise to you, and then looking at how students in their cohort perform at GCSE with the same Key Stage 2 data, and then they look at that journey, and then they look at how an individual student compares to the average. So if they make the same progress as everybody else from Key Stage 2 to 4, their progress would be called a 0, which is basically making the progress you'd expect, and then they can be above that and they can be below that. So that's how the government do it. And we use the data models that we can be provided with. The main one we use is called Fisher Family Trust, and that gives us some benchmarks looking at where we would expect them to be. Now, that obviously just purely takes Key Stage 2 results, and we know by the time they've got to year 10, we've had 3 years of education since then, and some children make more progress during that time, some make less, etc. So what we do is look at those benchmarks, and then we look at what we've seen of the students across the 3 years that we've known them. So departments will use their assessments and classwork, etc. And putting those two things together, working with the heads department, we come up with a Hampton Gardens target. And we use that to help us to see if they're roughly on the right track, because that's all a target is. It's an idea of where we would hope they would be. Some students meet all of their targets, some exceed them, some don't do as well in some but do in others, and ultimately it's not about everybody getting to every single one of their targets. We're trying to set something that's aspirational to give them something to aim for, but then it helps us track how they're doing along the way. So if we can see they're way below in lots of subjects, then we need to be stepping in there and putting some support in place. So that's what it's all about, really. It's not a sort of you've got to meet your target and if you don't you're doing badly. It's really just to help us all track and see if we're on the right track and where that support might need to be put into place. We will use grade cards like we have previously, very similar to what we've done before. In year 10, we won't give you a grade on the first one. It will have a target grade on there for the end of year 11, as I've just mentioned. But the first one we do, because it's still quite early days, it takes a while to really get to know where a student is. We will just give you an on-track judgment. So whether we think a student is working above target, whether they're on target, or whether they're slightly below target. So it does take staff a little bit of time to really get to know where what level a student is working at. The further grade cast after that will have a teacher predicted grade on it. So it will give you an idea of where the teacher thinks they are now, a working out grade, and where they think they will be at the end of year 11, which obviously is using a professional judgment along with assessments that students have taken. So that's how we're going to approach it, and hopefully that will help us keep students on the right path. I mean, ultimately, it's all about us working all together to get them to that end point. Sometimes that's easier with some students than others. Sometimes we're just giving them a helping hand, and sometimes we're putting them dragging and screaming slightly. But that's the job we've got to do over the next couple of years, because that's what we're committed to. You know, along with working with you, is to get in everybody where they need to be. So what sort of things will we be looking at putting in place? Obviously, this is the plan. We might be doing some of those with some students, we might be doing all of those with some students. It depends on where the student is. But one of the most important things I think Hampton Gardens can offer is really high quality teaching. We're very lucky at Hampton Gardens that all of our staff are subject specialists, which is a really good place to be starting from. So high quality teaching, for anybody's education, that is the most important part. And there's various mentoring we can put into place. And again, some of that may be supportive mentoring. Some of that might be a little bit of the nagging variety, keeping people on track, getting homeworks in on time, etc. We'll run revision sessions, hopefully. In previous settings, I've run revision days where we've had external people coming in. Hopefully we can do that next year. If not, we'll do something, similar to try and help inspire and to push students on. Achievement support, always obviously a good source of support for many of our students. We'll be working closely together. We'll put out revision guides. We might be doing some extra revision sessions nearer the time, catch-up sessions, etc. They're all sort of things that you may have had. If you have older children, you might have experienced in other schools. So those sorts of things to help and push and guide, etc., to get students, the very best results for them that they can possibly get. And we also have a variety of online resources. And I think it's fair to say one of the few upsides of the current situation where we've just come out of a lockdown is seeing how some students, I appreciate not all, but how some students have really risen to the challenge of online learning and how good they have got at being independent learners, which is something as teachers we've always sort of, if only they took a little bit more responsibility for their own learning. And some have really stepped up and done that, which is fantastic. And we want to build on this. So what I'm always encouraging students to be doing is looking at their own gaps, not waiting to be told by the teacher. The teacher is one part of the equation, but how they take control of what they can and can't do, and then doing things to fill in those gaps can really make a huge difference. So there are some of the resources that we have been using, that we used previously, that we've brought into to help us going forward. So it's really about encouraging students, as I say, to be independent learners. The teacher can get through so much in class, they can go over things, they can't always know what every student's individual small gap might be. So the more students can take control of that, the better. And that's where we see students being most successful. So some of the things we'll be talking to students about are on the screen in front of you. It's just a flavour, really. We'll do a lot of work with them, both within tutor times, in assemblies, etc. And obviously in subject staff will talk to them as well. But just a few of the key things. I mean, one of the main things I'd normally be talking about is attendance and how important it is that they're there. The figures of just a 5% attendance drop can have a huge impact on the number of lessons you're actually missing out on. Obviously, we're in a slightly different scenario at the moment where attendance may be out of your control due to self-isolation, etc. So obviously, hopefully you've seen what we've put in place for students on Teams. All staff are being asked to upload lessons, etc. If you've told us they're self-isolating, then work should be being set, but there are further guidelines coming out to that as we get used to it and refine what we're doing. So look out for that. So that obviously is going to be crucial over the next few months at least. Taking mock exams seriously. I mean, we always used to say that, but hopefully students get it. Maybe they've seen, as you have, what happened this year with centre assessed grades and how that panned out with having to use teacher predictions and assessment data, etc. And mocks would have been a large part of that. So, you know, we often get students saying, oh, I'll revise next time, or I'll do it for the real things. And really that sort of goes against, you know, what we're trying to do, because mocks are all about trying to see what you know now, what we need to close the gaps on. And if you do no work for those, obviously we're not getting a true reflection of what we need to support them with, or we're just getting too much information and it's just not doable. So that's going to be even more important over, you know, this next couple of years. Who knows what's going to happen with exams next year? For the current year 11s going forward, you would hope that we'd be back to some sort of normality for year 10, but who knows? So obviously, as we know more, we'll keep you posted. Working together, supporting each other, you know, students can work really effectively in mini study groups, and we saw that over lockdown actually, some students working together on teams, which was lovely to see. So helping each other out, meeting coursework deadlines really promptly, so getting things in so that we can help and we can support, we can give feedback where we can. Sometimes our hands are tied by the regulations, but getting things in on time really helps us to help them. So, you know, that's something we'll talk to them quite a lot about. The other thing we'll talk to them about is that we're all on the same side. I think sometimes as teenagers they forget that we're just there to nag them as parents and teachers and get on at them, and it can feel to them that it's quite negative. But, you know, just to reminding them we want what they want, which hopefully is the best results they can possibly get, and that's certainly what you as parents are looking for. So just reminding them that working with their teachers, you know, if they're not sure of things, talking to them, but doing that in an appropriate way. Sometimes that may not be the way they communicate with us, and that can then lead to, you know, really them not getting the support that perhaps they're really asking for but not quite sure how to ask. Having the right equipment with them, particularly for practical subjects, but, you know, even things like a maths lesson, having the right calculator, having your own calculator, because you being an expert in using your calculator is vital. So, you know, making sure you're well organised. And then really, it's about working hard all the way through. If you work hard in your lessons, if you do the homework that's set, you revise your revision when you come to do it is really that, it's revision. It's not learning things from scratch, which is where the pressure gets piled on. You're also not going to be, you know, looking at extra sessions, catch up, etc. You know, so it takes the pressure off. So encouraging them to work from the beginning is something that, you know, we're really focused on, because then, you know, they have the time allocated in their timetable. If they're using it wisely, you know, they've got plenty of time to cover everything they need to be covering. And then the last one really is what I call it self-sabotage. You know, and it shows it's facing many forms. And one, you know, some of the most common are, you know, if I pretend I don't care, and say I don't care, then when I don't do very well, that's okay, because I don't care anyway. I haven't met any student who doesn't actually care deep down, and trying to convince them that, you know, be brave enough to face things can be a bit of a challenge for some of them. And the other one that they tend to do is that sort of, you know, stick your head in the sand, the ostrich effect, and it's all going on around me and I can't deal with it. And again, that can take a little bit of support and help from, you know, home and from school to help them with that. So there are lots of different forms. They sort of, you know, shoot themselves in the foot a little bit, but that's all part and parcel of us working with teenagers. We're used to that, we know that, etc. So, you know, they all present in different ways. So then we come on to, you know, ideas for you as a parent. You know, we're very lucky to have an incredibly supportive parent body. You want the best for your children. We understand that. We want the best for them as well. So, you know, some from experience things you might be able to do. And I'm talking here a little bit with, you know, as a parent as well. My children are have been through this, and you know, at times it was a tricky old process. We had two doing exams the same year. We had my daughter doing A-levels the same year. My son was doing GCSE. So you can imagine it was quite an interesting time over those 2 years, particularly in year 11. So, you know, there is some sort of experience I'm bringing, as well as obviously working with many students over a number of years in different schools. So how can you support your child? Attending parents' evenings, is really useful because it gives you an idea of what they need to work on, how they're doing, etc. We will be running parents' evenings. They will look different. They will be remote, etc. More information will come out about that. But we will certainly be running parents' evenings as we plan to. So you're the provider of the tools, the equipment, helping them know what they need, encouraging them to be organised, bring it in. Some of them will be ultra on that and you won't need to do anything. Others, not so much. I have one of each in my house. So, some need that help and support. Revision guides, I spent a small fortune on them, to be honest, with my for both my children, and one of them used them really well. The other one, I can't honestly say that they opened them. So, talk to them. What do they think is going to be useful? Just buying the books and them disappearing under the bed really is not going to help them. So talk to them. If they're going to use them, fantastic. There's some great ones out there. We will give out more information about that nearer the time and give some recommendations. You don't need to spend a fortune because a lot of the really good ones are actually quite reasonable. So, that's one thing you can do. Listening to them, obviously being their sounding board, trying to support them. Sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. The way they present, if they're stressed, etc., isn't always the easiest. But, just being that sounding board, a little bit of helping out with planning their time, particularly if they've got coursework, not leaving things to the last minute, etc. That can be really useful for parents to be sort of modelling and working with them. Of course, we'll do it in school, but the more support they get, the better. Encouraging them to talk to us in school. Obviously, we're here to help. We want to help. We've got teachers, you've got form tutors, you've got head of year, Mrs. Knight Student Services, etc. There's lots of support there. Please encourage them to come and talk to us if they're struggling. But if they can't come and talk to us, being the go-between, coming to talk to us, letting us know is useful for us as well. I think they need a life. I think, again, they will all come at this in a different way. So some of them will put a lot of pressure on themselves, will work incredibly hard, maybe too much so. Sometimes I was talking to one of my children about that's enough now because actually it is consuming your life and you need to have a balance between work and social life and get, helping them to model that is good. Some parents put in like a reward structure, which, is entirely up to you. But I think the focus I tried to do with my children was it was about the working hard, not about the results. So rather than getting a lot of really, high grades, etc., it was about putting the work in, because ultimately, as long as they've tried their hardest, that's what we want them to do, I think. And then the last one, maybe a contentious one, and good luck with it, but consider their use of devices. It is, all the research shows that using devices does impact on their learning. It's about using their devices late into the night. Is it something that you can do that everyone charges their phone downstairs, etc., little things like that, so that they're not on them all through the night, etc., and then they're tired. But also the working with the device, again, this is an argument I've had with both students and my own children. I work better if I have music on or I have my phone next to me. Well, I think the thing that you need to consider there is cognitive load theory, and you can chuck that at them. Our brains can't cope with many different things going on at once, and yes, you may think that you're working better, but that's probably more that you're just enjoying it more because you're listening to the music. Whether you're actually being effective and efficient in what you're doing is debatable, and the research would tend to say that you're not. Maybe music with no lyrics, slightly different, but actually that argument is not sort of backed up by the research. And then certainly having it next to you and the Snapchat messages, the Instagram messages pinging in, etc., of course is going to distract them. It's not efficient, good study. So actually they'll spend more time having to study because actually what they're learning isn't going in so well. So, having a chat about device use, coming to some agreements, how they use it, etc. But as I say, good luck. It's not an easy one with teenagers and devices, but it is worth, I think, having an honest conversation with them. And ultimately, whatever we do, it's up to them at the end of the day. They're turning into young adults now, and it's really about what they want for their future. So having those conversations, where do they want to be, and getting them to see that actually it's not about what the school wants, what the teachers are trying to do, what the parents are trying to do. It's really about them and their futures and what they want out of this. And ultimately, it's the old adage, isn't it, that you get out what you put in. So just having those conversations. Of course, exams leading up to, even across the 2 years, they are stressful. They do impact on people's well-beings, and again, some students will cope better than others, and they're all different. Some of them will put huge pressure on themselves, and as I said before, we need to help them manage that, etc. So just to remind you, we do have wellbeing resources, quite extensive link to our Padlet, which you can get to via the school website. There's one for students, there's one for parents. We update those regularly, and as we're going along, I think something more that we will add in is about supporting exam wellbeing, etc., because that's going to become more and more relevant over the coming couple of years. So we will be updating those regularly as well. That leads us into some sort of key dates. Obviously, we've got a parents' evening booked in. If you look at the school calendar, I'm sorry, I forgot to put that on, but if you look at the school calendar, it is on the school calendar, and we will be running that as normal. We're going to do some year 10 exams. We're thinking May 2021, but again, I'm saying thinking because we don't know what's going to happen over coming weeks and months in terms of lockdown, so this could change. We'll do a year 11 revision evening similar to this with parents and students about effective revision strategies, etc., leading into a mock exam period around about the end of November or start of December. What's worked well in previous schools that we've done, and I plan to do here as well, is do like a mock results day, so they get that impact of opening that envelope and hopefully being pleased, but often not being pleased and getting that negative feeling. And sometimes it can really sort of spur people on to think, actually, I don't want it to be like this in the summer. And we tie that in with a parents' evening as well after the mock exam, so we can talk about next steps, what's gone well. In some subjects, we may then put another mock exam in. We're mindful of lost curriculum time already because of lockdowns, etc. So in the past, we definitely would have done that. This time, we perhaps will only be looking at maybe some key subjects where it might be useful. But again, that will adapt and change as we go through. And then it's into the real exams, which real exams normally start around mid-May, creeping a little bit earlier into May. And then last all the way through June, depending on the subjects that they're taking. So, that's seems like a long time away for them, but I think we know as adults how quickly that time goes. And then it's the results day mid-August. And of course, I'm saying all of this as if we're going to be in a normal situation, which hopefully we will be. But again, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I certainly wouldn't have predicted doing this on a camera in front, not being in front of you if you'd asked me a year ago. But there we go. Life changes. So hope that's been useful. It's really about the message that I'm going to be putting across to students in a separate video that I'm going to do for them and deliver as, an online assembly. It's really about the work. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And it's certainly something I've seen in schools year after year after year. Pure talent will get you so far. So an aptitude will get you so far in a subject. But the people who do best in GCSE exams every time are the people who put in the hours, who put in the work. They take charge of their learning a little bit. So that's, a really clear message that we're going to be giving to them. And another really clear message is it's going to be tough at times. You're not going to get everything. So I think one of the main messages I want to get across to students is that it's the hard work that actually creates the success. That it really is true that hard work beats talent, because I've seen year after year, and even within my own children, that it's not the natural ability necessarily it's going to carry them through on its own. It's the commitment and the work that people put in. And it's just so true that those students who really work hard from the beginning, stick at it, keep grafting, bounce back and carry on, are the ones who ultimately are the most successful. So it's a very strong message we're going to be trying to put across to them throughout the next couple of years. And I'd said the bounce back, the resilience, it's one of the most important bits, because some things are going to be tough. They're going to be tackling things at a higher level than they've ever had. Of course they are, because their learning's increasing. So it's that ability to not let that phase you, and to stick at things, and bouncing back when things perhaps don't go wrong and assessment doesn't go the way you want it to. It's the learning from that and the picking yourself up and finding out where you went wrong that can really make the difference. So I think that really brings us to the end. As I said at the beginning, if you would like to ask any questions, we're going to email out and pop on the website a quick form that you can fill in, and we'll get back to you either individually or, as I say, with the fax question sheet if there's similar questions coming through. But we're always here, so you can email us at inquiries. Obviously, Mr. Joyce, who's head of Year 10, a lot of you can get in contact with form tutors, myself, etc. If there's anything that you need help and support with, do get in contact with us, and hopefully together we can get through the next couple of years and help our students and your children to get wherever it is that they wish to get to in the next step of their education and then ultimately in life. So thank you very much for listening. Hope the fact this isn't live hasn't been too distracting, and look forward to seeing you all again soon at some point when we can all get together in the school hall to talk more. Thanks very much.